Hello, friends, and welcome. I'm your co-host, Andrew Lazaga, here with Dubside.
And you're listening to the Dubcast with Dubside.
So I want to share with you something that I discovered recently, and I've been having a bit of fun with. And it's called ChatGPT, which is an artificially intelligent chatbot that you can access online for free.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask it if it can tell you how to roll a kayak. Okay.
This could be interesting.
Yeah. So I asked it, how do you roll a kayak? And this is what it came up with.
A kayak roll is a technique used to right a capsized kayak and get back into the boat while it is still in the water. It is an essential skill for kayakers, especially those who paddle in rough or challenging conditions. Here are the basic steps for performing a kayak roll. Set up your kayak. To perform a kayak roll, you will need to be in a kayak that is specifically designed for rolling and equipped with a spray skirt. Make sure you are comfortable with your kayak and have a good understanding of how it handles before attempting a roll. Capsize the kayak. To perform a roll, you will first need to capsize your kayak. This can be done intentionally or accidentally, depending on the circumstances. If you are practicing rolls in calm water, you can capsize your kayak by leaning to one side and using your paddle to push the boat over. Grab your paddle. Once you are upside down in the water, reach for your paddle and hold it parallel to the boat with your hands close together near the blade. The paddle should be oriented so that the blade is facing away from the boat. Perform the roll. To perform the roll, use your paddle to push against the water while simultaneously pulling on the spray skirt with your other hand. As you do this, use your body and head to help rotate the kayak back upright. It may take some practice to get the timing and technique right, but with practice, you should be able to complete a successful roll.
That's it?
Yeah. Well, you can ask it to elaborate on whatever.
Well, I mean, it sounds like it's what it's saying there. I would think anybody trying that would have a lot of trouble getting any roll to work. It's talking about the hips, starting with hip snap foundation. You get like Sherry and Turner to give somebody land exercises for an hour or so before they get in the water, and it jump starts their success far better than this kind of thing. But
yeah.
Anyway.
But that's pretty cool, isn't it? The thing about pushing your spray skirt with your other hand doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that sounds like a C to C thing, like what, someplace to put your other hand. But yeah, it clearly hasn't got much Greenland knowledge in its data banks.
Yeah, but I was pretty impressed by what it came up with from a simple question like that. That was the unedited text that I just copied and pasted into a voice synthesizer.
All right. Another 10 or 20 years and they'll be much better and they'll be replacing us live human instructors.
Yep. It may be sooner than that.
Rolling instruction and kayak building and everything else.
One thing actually it does pretty well is you can ask it to write poetry.
All right.
So I asked it to write a poem about skin on frame kayaks in the style of a Shakespeare sonnet. Okay, so check this one out. Okay.
All right.
Oh, skin on frame kayaks, so strong and true. A vessel built with skill and craftsmanship. Their wooden frames and skins so finely hewn. A work of art that cannot be surpassed. Their graceful lines and curves so sleek and smooth. They cut through waves with ease and poise. Their strength and grace, a sight to behold. A joy to paddle and make one's own choice. So let us raise a toast to skin on frame. A boat that's built to last and brave the waves. With craftsmanship and skill it is made. A true testament to human artisanship. So let us paddle on and explore. In our beloved skin on frame kayaks we'll soar.
What do you think?
Well, I could see the formula, how it's just plugging things in here and there, but Yeah, I mean, the kayak song has somewhat of a a theme of like how it with wonderful kayak and handles in the water,
Yeah.
so and all that. So I can't fault it in that regard, but yeah.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the kayak song.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, coming up in the near future, we've been talking to our friends at Gear Lab in Taiwan about getting the Gear Lab entrepreneur, Chung Shi, on for an interview.
That'd be cool.
For those who don't know, Gear Lab makes carbon fiber Greenland paddles, among other things. And you have one, right?
I was using one of mine yesterday.
Ah, very good.
Yeah.
And I'm also hoping to get Molten Avery on. And you've mentioned Molten before.
Mr. Cold Water Safety.
Yeah. He's a pioneer in cold water safety and spent his career promoting a number of safety practices that we take for granted now, such as the whole concept of dressing for immersion. Plus, he's also a Greenland style enthusiast.
Mm-hmm.
So keep tuning in. We should have a lot more interesting episodes in the future.
Yeah, and I haven't been to Greenland. I'm hoping to go this year, 2023. We'll see if that works out. But I haven't been for a while, but I've missed going to those competitions. But when I did go to those competitions, some of the things that happened, you'll find out about in this episode right here. So let it go.
Welcome to the Dubcast with Dubside. This is Dubcast number 37. Looking at crowd sounds at the Greenland competition. And I will also re-examine the kayak song. Remember the kayak song from back in episode 1 and 2 and 6 and 10? I have yet another version in an attempt to get you interested in the kayak song, since it's such a big deal in Greenland for the Greenland kayakers. We have yet another. This one is actually a remix of a previous version. But yes, the kayak song once again. Well, before I tell you about crowd sounds in Greenland, let me talk about a crowd sound in the U.S., and this is a story relating to Philadelphia, where I started paddling. And last episode, number 36, I talked about coming up the Delaware River at night with an encounter with a tugboat. And that actual trip, looking in my logbook, took place January of 2003. And actually, I went out that day to go down. I wanted to go down to the tip of Philadelphia on the Delaware. And I couldn't take the shortcut, the smaller river, the Schuylkill River down, because the Schuylkill River was frozen over pretty solidly. So I had to go out to the Delaware up above the Ben Franklin Bridge and then paddle all the way down to get down to the tip of Philadelphia. So I started in the daytime, and I went down there because it was a special day. This is January 19th, 2003. And on that day, the Philadelphia Eagles, the football team, had reached the playoffs, and I think this was the second round of the playoffs. So they were doing very well. So that Philadelphia gets really fired up when the football team or any sports team does really well. And so they were going to play in their home stadium this playoff game on the way to the Super Bowl. And they were favored to win this game. And it was a very special occasion because they were playing this at Veterans Stadium. There's a stadium in Philadelphia at the time. That the baseball and the football team played their games in that stadium. And that stadium had been there for quite some time and gotten quite old and decrepit and was up for replacement. They wanted a whole new stadium. I think they got separate stadiums for the football and baseball team after that. So they were going to tear that stadium down later in that year. So this would be the last football game the Philadelphia Eagles would ever play in that stadium. So that was part of the hype. And they were on their way to the Super Bowl, and they were favored to win. So it was a big deal. So I thought it would be interesting to paddle down there. And the stadium, it's not right on the river, but it's close enough you can see it. And I wanted to, just hear the sound of the crowd from my kayak. And it was scheduled that they were going to have a flyover by some jets, as a salute to the occasion. So I paddled all the way down there. This is January, and it was either just about freezing or it dropped below freezing later on the day after it got dark. But it was chilly out there, and so I paddled all the way down there, and I was outside the stadium, on the water, and I couldn't really hear the sound of the crowd. I just maybe the way the wind was blowing or something. I just didn't hear anything. I saw that the jets flew by. I saw that. And so stayed down there for a while. And then as it was getting dark, I said, well, I'll give up on this. So I was paddled back up the river, and that's when it got dark. And then I had the encounter with the tugboat that I told you about last time. So continuing after the tugboat, I'm paddling up the Delaware, and it takes an hour or more to get up there to where I was taken out. And I could tell that the football team had lost. The Philadelphia Eagles had lost that game. I knew just from the sound of the city. There weren't, cars honking their horns and people screaming, which is usually what happens when they win the big game, but nothing. So I figured, when I got back home, listened to the radio, yep, they lost that game. Now I'm such a tepid football fan that I don't even know if the Philadelphia Eagles have a team song, like a fight song or something they sing. But anyway, at the Greenland competition, they do have such things. And at the kayak championships, well, you'll typically hear the kayak song in the background, during the week many times. So the race is going on, but they play the kayak song and people sing while they cheer. And when they're not singing songs, they are screaming their lungs out. By the final dinner, there are people who are hoarse from having screamed the whole week. But there's a different song that's heard just about as frequently. And the tune is familiar to Americans as She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain, but the words are different. Now, it took me a couple years of hearing yippee, ya, yippee, again and again and again, before I found out that is not a general Greenland song. That is the song from Kayak Nuuk, one of the biggest clubs that fields sometimes 30, 40, 50 people at the competition. That is their fight song that they cheer on their team with. And a team like Kayak Ilulissat, they're another big powerhouse team, they don't have a song per se. They'll just have some of their members just scream out the name of their town at top volume to cheer on their competitors. Took me a couple years to narrow down that it was Rita Jensen from Kayak Ilulissat who was behind that particular scream. And after enough years of hearing the yuppie-ya-ya yuppie business, Kayak Kokotok in South Greenland tried to come up with their own thing, and they succeeded with, it's not quite a song, but it's a chant. And I think Abel Jacobson, one of their members, sort of got behind that. So they all say, hoo-ta-ta, hoo-ta. But it sounds like this. So at the competition, the final day, at the end of the week, they have a big dinner. And they give it all the medals and they give out the trophies and announce the overall man and woman winner. And then it's a big, huge party after that. And so the next morning, most people are not even conscious before noon. But since I'm not the party animal, I'll check it out. And then sometime after around midnight or before, I'll go to sleep and wake up as I usually do. I'm an early bird. And this was maybe 2009, I think it was. So I get up early, and I see some kids running around. And imagine they had not slept at all. They're still awake. And so I start hanging out with them. And, without even speaking Greenlandic, I can, just do what they do and get in good with them. So these kids had figured out, the kitchen was all locked up, but not to some clever kids. They figured out how to crawl out on a ledge and go down along and then climb back in a window and get into the kitchen and then unlock the door from the inside. And then, with a free range of the kitchen, they figured out where the ice cream was kept and gave themselves all some free ice cream breakfasts. And then this was in Ilulissat. There was a school. It was a very new school. They'd replaced the old school with this brand new facility. They figured out there was a gymnasium. So the school, every team gets its own classroom, but the rest of the school is all locked up. But these kids figured out there was a gymnasium that they could see through the glass in the hallway. So they wanted to get in there, and they figured out that there was a locker room and climbing up a balcony and coming out on a ledge and jumping down. So they figured out how to get in there. And then they found that the gym mats and some balls in a closet and were throwing them all over the place, having a good old time. And in this group of kids, there was this one girl. Her name was Cornelie. And she had learned at least one phrase in English. You know how you'll learn some other language and just, yell out what you know at random times just because it's the only thing you know. And so she had this little phrase of hers, and she would just, while we're in the middle of anything, she would suddenly say,
"What the hell is going on?"
Naturally, I thought that was funny enough to record, so I captured it there. Cornelia had an older sister named Belinda, and they'd been coming to the competition for quite some time. We were just watching them grow up. And their mother was Marie Christian Samuelson, or for a time she was Marie Christian Janussen, I think. But she was one of the top women competitors, and she won the title a number of times. She was the standout person. And they were all from the town of Pamiut in South Greenland. And that town didn't have as big a team as the larger teams like Nuuk or Ilulissat or Sisimiut. But they did okay. And as time went on, people in Greenland tend to move different places. And Marie Christian, she moved to Nuuk. And there might have been some other things going on. But the Pamiut team kind of ceased to be. And they stopped sending people. The club was completely inactive, unfortunately. And Marie Christian still participated for several years after that, but I think her two daughters got involved in other things, and they weren't kayaking anymore. I guess Cornelia is in her early 20s now. Probably has kids of her own, but I still have that frozen in time sample of her.
What the hell is going on?
Well, kids come and go, get involved, and then lose their interest. And a couple years after that, in 2014, new face came to the competition, a kid from Sisimiut, and his name was Isaias Bertelsen. And as far as developing your own trademark sound, Isaias Bertelsen took it to a whole nother level. So imagine you're at the competition, and whether it's eating a meal in the cafeteria or watching the races or they're giving out the medals, suddenly from some remote corner comes this sound. And you can hear that is a good deal more complex than just hu-ta-ta, or ilulami, ilulami, ilulami. And Isaias was only like 12 or 13 years old. And when he did that, he would really get into it. He'd be waving his hands up and down and twisting around and getting quite animated. And as soon as he finished, he would stop and calmly go back to his posture from before as if nothing happened. And the following year, Isaias came back again, and the year after that. And people became very much accustomed to his little sound, and people started to chant along with him and really get into it. And he became quite the popular character at the competition. And for people like me who would show up with a video camera, it was a fairly simple matter to get a recording of this sound. Except it was a little tricky to get the beginning of it because, he would break into it without any warning. So if you were already recording, you'd get it. But if you tried to whip out your camera and start, you'd miss the first part. But I got a couple good ones. And you can hear how much other people were into it. To this day, I have no idea what it means, what he says, but I've certainly heard it plenty of times. And looking back over the scores, the record of the competition, I see that that first year he came, 2014, he did maybe one of the races, or maybe none of the races, and he did, I think, a little bit of the harpoon throwing. He didn't do any rolling. He did compete in ropes, and he got 8 points, which is not a qualifying score. You don't get a medal for just 8 points. Harpoon throwing for distance, he was 5th out of 7, which means there's no medal there. And by the end of the week, he had gotten no medals whatsoever, which is rather difficult to do in Greenland. He's only competing, and that would have been what the boys, 12 to 14-year-olds. The Greenland boys, 12 to 14 years old. There was maybe, 8 or 9 people in that section, but he did not get a medal in anything. And the year after that, and the year after that, he generally would not do races, maybe once or twice, maybe one of the team races. But he never did rolling. He did try on the ropes, and he would do the harpoon stuff. But in the 4 years that he came to the competition, I believe what the records show is that he never got a medal in anything. But the thing is, he didn't have to. He had made his mark. He'd made more than made his mark. I think he commanded a level of respect that a lot of the people his age with gold medals weren't getting. And as far as I know, 2017 was the last time that Isaias came to the competition. And capping off quite a career, you could say, on the final night of the dinner, there's a stage and there's a microphone and there's a band that plays later on, and the people make announcements and they give out the medals and things. And so while people are eating at various times, somebody might get up on the mic and add some extra thing, or they'll tell funny jokes or something like that. It's in Greenlandic, so I can't really understand what they're saying. So on that final night, Isaias, with encouragement, got up on stage to give the definitive version of his trademark chant. And this kid has got skills. Before he did it, he had some remarks. I didn't understand exactly what he said. And he takes his hat off and he holds it upside down. He says, and then he walks the entire circuit of the room for donations. And people are pulling out the kroner coins and bills and stuff. And the hat was full to the top by the time he got back to the stage. And I think later on he counted it, and it was the dollar equivalent. He had probably about $100 in there. So he had the business angle covered. So then with the right amount of fanfare, generating it himself, he proceeded to give a triple dose of the trademark Isaias Bertelsen sound. So here he is at the 2017 Greenland National Kayak Championships final dinner, working the crowd and making money doing it. And the crowd is still calling out for more. Now, if you compare that to the first one I played, from when it was actually 4 years younger. Yes, boys grow up into men and their voices change. Well, later on during the final dinner, they of course sang the kayak song, and I happened to be sitting just one table away from Isaias, and they start singing the song. Someone behind me is cranking out this, opera baritone voice, and it's Isaias. It's him singing the kayak song like he's Pavarotti. Well, you get the idea. Well, this year, Isaias turns 21, and I am not aware of what he has gone into at this point, but he's certainly left his mark on kayaking in Greenland. No doubt about that. Well, nowadays at the kayak competition, I'm sure Kayak Nuke is still singing their Yuppie Yuppie Yai song. But since Kayak Sisimut, which is where Isaias comes from, never really came up with their own song. So I think by default, the Isaias's thing, that's the Kayak Sisimut theme song. All right, are you getting tired of hearing that yet? Well, the original kayak song, I gave you a version of that. When they're sitting around the cafeteria and singing, somebody's got a guitar. I had a version of one of the early Dubcasts. So it goes kind of like this. And then I made my own version of it. And then I redid that version using a sample of the traditional Greenlandic drum and traditional Greenlandic singing. it goes on with the rest of the words. And if that wasn't enough, I made a more lively version of it. I call it the rockin' version of the kayak song. Yeah, this is actually the same song. Gotta have that cool lead electric guitar riff to kick it off. And then we go into the lyrics. And etc., etc. Well, I don't know exactly what the Greenlanders think of these recordings. I imagine some might take offense. I'm, butchering their song, and I would hope other people think it's kind of cool, maybe. Well, if I can get away with one more version of the kayak song, this is the remix of the rocking version with using some samples that we've been hearing, and I call this the house remix for the kayak song. Here it is.
Yo.
And for your reference, the kayak song version where they're singing it with a guitar and the Greenlanders sitting in the lunchroom, that was from Dubcast number 1, if you want to hear the whole unedited version. And my version, the mellow version of mine, was Dubcast number 2. And the rocking version of mine was Dubcast number 6. And the one with the traditional drum and the traditional Greenlandic singing, that was Dubcast number 10. And one of those back then, I gave the full translation of the Greenlandic lyrics into English. And it's in the first line, Uanga naminek, I myself, misigingilara, have never tried it. Gisiani, however, kayanguamik, about the kayak, okalu tutila savagit, I would like to tell you something. Now I know that nobody's going to learn how to become fluent in Greenlandic by listening to my podcast. And I myself certainly can't speak this very well. But I have fun with Kalashtisut Greenlandic. It's a fascinating language. Coming up in episode 38, I actually have no idea what I'm going to do. So I'll keep you in suspense. Till then, this is Dubside saying, Koyanok Ayungirok.